like to call the Rules and City Government Committee to order. For the record, please note that the members of the committee are here, Alderman Arnett and Alderman Savage. Approval of the agenda. Before we approve the agenda, there are some changes. We're postponing several items that are on our agenda for today, and I apologize in advance. We're continuing to get new information, we're getting amendments, and we're determined, and our iPads won't work. And so we're determined to be prepared to address our legislation when it comes before us. So we are postponing Charter Amendment 619, the Department of the Environment, 01819, the Department of the Environment, the ordinance, 026, rental unit and short-term residential rental licenses, R30, rental unit and short-term residential rental licenses fees, R31, that's fines, 020, dwellings above the ground floor residential units, and R36, critical area overlay fees. So I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda with the remaining items 01019, and 03119.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
So,
and
sorry.
I apologize. Thank you for those of you who came. But now you have a couple of hours to do other more fun stuff. Approval of the minutes from the September 17th meeting.
Move approval of the minutes.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that takes us to 01019, Maryland Public Information Act.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Alderman.
My understanding is that this is largely to bring us into conformance with changes at the state level. Having reviewed it, everything seems in order except for Section 2, which says that it'll take effect July 1st, 2019, which I believe has passed, so I think we should offer an amendment that it take effect upon passage.
Okay, so is that a motion?
It is a motion to recommend with that one amendment.
Second.
Okay, so the amendment is to set a date certain for the implementation of this legislation, and that date being upon the passing.
Yeah, upon the passing.
Upon the passing of the legislation.
Right.
Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, and that takes us to 03119.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I have to vote on.
Oh, I have to vote on the legislation, the ordinance as amended.
As amended.
Right.
So move recommendation as amended.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, and now that takes us to 031. City Council meetings, rules and procedure. And not having my iPad, this is the
one to change
legislation that changes the speaking time
from 5 to 3.
from 5 to 3 minutes. Now, my recollection is that we used to have a 5-minute time frame.
Code
In the
currently
code.
says 5 minutes.
And then it was changed to 3 and then changed back to 5.
Well, we never changed it in code. It was became the practice actually under Mayor Moyer. It was the practice when we first got on the council, and was continued under Mayor Cohen. Mayor Panelides wanted to do 3 minutes. Actually, I think he wanted to change it to
5.
Well, he wanted to change it to 2, like the county, And I said, fine, but right now the code says 5, so if you want to do that, you need to put in legislation to change it to 2, and he didn't want to take the heat of changing to a shorter time period. So it remained at 5. I think Alderman Gay and others have said that 5 is too long. My personal opinion is that it's not the time limit for the people speaking. I think they do need to be a little bit better coordinated, but it's the mammoth size of our agendas. And particularly when we know that the agenda is including something that's going to be very controversial and a lot of people want to speak on it. But the code currently provides for 2 council meetings. The first council meeting, the regular council meeting, is for legislation. The second council meeting is for public hearings. Piece of paper.
I haven't.
No. And if we could consider returning to something like that, we would have plenty of time for people to speak.
Well, I guess my response to that is that would not get us out of at least one late night meeting a month, as opposed to, and right now it's usually one late night meeting a month. I don't feel that limiting the time is limiting the opportunity for the community to give us their message. Because they send it to us in email, they call us on the phone, so we have opportunities. And I'm not sure whether the testimony is posted. Ms. Green, do we post written testimony
No.
anywhere?
No.
Okay. That might be an answer. But I think it's kind of a fairness issue also. You give more people an opportunity to have 2 minutes, and, well, 3 minutes, right? 3 minutes.
The county does 2. I feel that is way too short. You can see that people are rushed and would like to give a more full explanation of their point. We know empirically that 3 worked well for
Ben?
for at least 8 years, because that was the practice, even though it wasn't the code. And we do know that 5 gets some people there continuing on to fill up their time, even after their point has long been made. On the other hand, I am getting considerable pushback from my constituents that this is the only real time, because our committee meetings are during the day, for people, particularly those who work, to speak their mind in front of the council. And they're not particularly pleased with the notion of limiting that time. A lot of people do come up and speak quickly. Some people come up and make their point succinctly and sit down. But there are people who view this as showtime or amateur hour or whatever, and go on and on. I think we might have someone in the audience that wants to speak to this, but
Mr. Buchheiser, are you interested in speaking on this piece of legislation?
Yes, ma'am.
Then come on down.
Hi, I'm Chris Buchheister, 5 Wagner Street, Annapolis. Hey, thanks for the opportunity to speak to you today on this important issue. And I enjoyed all of your perspectives over time, and I'm sure Alderman Savage, as kind of a new guy, has another perspective. I find it's a management issue. Again, I appreciate what Ross just said about people going to work. I mean, we can't get people who work out of town. You know, you've seen traffic around here. You're getting traffic in Forest Drive, and you can't even get into the city. So try to get here at 4 o'clock. You know, try to get here at 5. You get here at 7, and you can barely get under the wire. Anyway, that's another issue. But it's a management thing too. I mean, I've seen the buzzer go off at 5 minutes, and they just let people keep talking. So you ought to say wrap it up. It's a gavel rule. You either rule a meeting or you don't. So I don't want to waste your time and talk more, but I think if you just keep it at
You still have
5,
5 minutes.
I just keep it at 5. Sorry. But I appreciate you taking it up, but I don't think cutting it is good for democracy. And that's all I got. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Alderman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I've kind of had a change of heart on this as well, the more I've heard from people, and I think there are ways we can restructure our meetings. I do agree with a colleague from Ward 8 about looking at what each meeting, maybe having one meeting dedicated to business, more of a work session, and the second one being dedicated to public hearings. But also, I think we should limit the mayoral reports to only once a month, but also the committee reports perhaps to once a month. So we have all the reports, the citations dedicated just to one meeting, and then we have more of a traditional work session where we actually vote and deliberate on the legislation at the other meeting. I do agree with Mr. Bucheister about the just better controlling the meeting. I went to the county council meeting last night. I think I was crazy. It was up till about 12:30 at that meeting, but they had a lot of people signed up to speak. I know because I was number 84, I think, on the list, and probably only about 4 or 5 of them actually went overtime. They knew they were going to get cut off after 2 minutes, and those who did go over were wrapped up pretty quick, and their mics were shut off eventually if they needed to. But also, just from my own self, after preparing remarks for 2 minutes, it is quite difficult to make any kind of cogent argument in 2 minutes, and 3, I don't think would be much better, honestly. I'm still open to it in the future, but I think we should look at some of these other changes first. And we'll also just limit our interaction between the council and the speakers, because sometimes that ends up, and I know I'm guilty of it at times too, but of dragging on the meetings.
I promise not to ask questions. Here's what the code says, and it's not clear, but it says a regular monthly meeting of the City Council shall take place at 7 p.m. on the second Monday of each month, except that the council shall have no regular monthly meeting during the month of August. Special meetings may be called by the mayor. No public hearing before the council shall commence after 10:30. No item of business shall be taken up or acted upon unless it's under consideration by 11 p.m. So when I first challenged this under the Moyer administration about why the council didn't have more control of its own agenda, I was told that the mayor is the one that sets the agenda. Well, it is certainly true that that's inferred to in Article 2 of the code, that the second meeting, the special meeting, is the mayor's meeting. What I was told at that time, and again, it's not clear here, is that it had always been the practice that the second meeting was for public hearings. And by the way, I'm reviewing a resolution, R5081, which all of the public testimony is included in the resolution as part of the resolution to be passed. So they used to have the name of the person and a one-paragraph synopsis of the position of the person. So we've moved away from recording what people are saying, and we certainly seem to have migrated away from the special meeting. Now, the thing I like about a special meeting is it feels to me that we do not spend enough time hearing from our constituents in a more communicative, kind of conversational sort of way. Now, I know we're not supposed to have dialogue back and forth. It's their time to speak, but it really does seem that if we got back to something on the order of having the second meeting be a special meeting, the first meeting, so the way the county does it you do public testimony on one meeting, and then you vote in the next meeting. So the county, and county's not my model, I don't think we have a county form of government or system very much, but pretty much all of the public hearing is heard before you do your deliberations on and actually vote on the legislation, which feels right to me. It doesn't feel right we should hear from the public and that same night vote on the thing. How much does that say that we took into consideration what they were telling us?
But that's
that
not
night?
how we
That's not
function.
what you-
And not now, not in the long
Right.
run, not in our term.
Yes.
Well, except for
But I think that's the
resolutions
way
we
it
do.
was in your
Yeah.
days of yore, which seems to me to be a better format for actually listening to the people that put us in office.
Well, I have to speak as an educator, as a public speaking, a speech teacher.
Okay?
One of the things I taught all of my students, and as I hear from students a lot, the course that mattered the most to them, the course that they now feel as adults had the most impact on them, is their public speaking class. And I taught them not just how to deliver good speeches, but how to conform to whatever the rules are. If the rules are 5 minutes, and they always had a timeline, they had to stay within that timeline. And they had to be able to deliver their message within that timeline if they were to get a positive response from the teacher on that message. And, I think that while 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, all of them have their benefits, in a public setting, when we're encouraging more and more people to speak, as you both have said, to not insist that folks be concise with their messages, that they don't repeat what everybody else has said, that they do not take this as their opportunity for 15 minutes of fame, but deliver the message, we hear it, so that we can move on to make some decisions. So we set the path. Now, there's no question that Mr. Buchheiser made some good points. The chair could be controlling our meetings far better. And I kind of turn off at 5 minutes, and I do that deliberately because the time is up.
You last that long?
Well, yes, I do last that long. And I watch people and I look them in the eye. Can't tell you the number of people who come up to say, thank you for looking at me while you're speaking. And I do that all the time. But when the time is up, the time is up for me. And I have to say, in many cases, the time should have been up before. So I think, we want our meetings to be efficient, and we can do that within the 3-minute time frame that we've set, or that we're proposing to set. And we're helping our audience to do the same thing. So, I'm going to support this ordinance, whatever it is, as it's written. The county can do 2. We should be able to do 3 and send the same message. We want to hear from you. Please prepare your remarks. And if you have longer remarks, give them to us or send them to us. We still get them. And yes, we do read them. I know people think that we don't, but we read them. And maybe we can come up with a way of attaching their written testimony that's sent to us to one of our legal documents so that it doesn't get lost, as they used to do back in the good old days.
Good old days. Back when rock was young.
Yes.
Well, so I don't know where we are now. Alderman Savage, I certainly don't want to be a sponsor of this any longer, and I don't plan to vote for it, so I certainly would have a hard time recommending favorably. I don't know whether you're inclined to make a recommendation that can be seconded and voted on or not.
Not at the moment, no. I really would like to explore some of these other alternatives, and along those lines, what are our options at this point to explore those other alternatives? I guess we'd have to introduce separate legislation, although some of, like you said, is already in the code. So I suppose the resolution simply reaffirming what's in there might be an option. But
Well, let me ask Ms. Green, the 90 days have passed. So what's going to happen with this legislation? Is it going to be on the agenda for
It
action?
hasn't been up yet.
What do you mean it hasn't been up? It was introduced on the 31st of July, August, September, October.
So it's getting close.
So we're
to
not
the-
Getting
counting-
close, but
yeah.
it's not for this next meeting.
Okay, so it'll be on the agenda for the 28th meeting? Okay, and we're not going to have another meeting between now and then. So if you prefer to not take action on this and have no report coming out of the Rules Committee?
That's my explanation at this point, yeah. I do think there are other solutions. I think this was written in response to a meeting where we had lots and lots of testimony, and we had already had, as Alderman Savage says, we take up an inordinate amount of time at the beginning of our meetings before we ever get in to the business of the meeting. And I think that there are ways that we can manage better. I do think in the county, when that gavel goes, you are cut off. And when people try to talk longer, they're cut off. So I do think that there could be a stronger management from the chair, the mayor's chair. But I also think the agenda can be better managed. When we know we're going to have a bunch of people showing up on an issue, we shouldn't put as much other stuff on the agenda.
Well, I'm not sure that when the agenda review is done, there is an indication of bunches of people showing up for any item. So I don't know how we could predict that. But I think your interest in reorganizing how we conduct our meetings would warrant another ordinance, to be honest with you.
I agree. I agree.
So,
Madam Chair.
you know, maybe that's something you want to pursue. And
Actually, if you would entertain it, I would actually like to hear what Chris thinks about this idea of having a legislative meeting and a separate meeting that is really more devoted to public hearing and give public more time.
please, yes.
I think that's a great and a viable solution to this, because I agree the way you all are parsing it, because it's great to recognize the community action and what people are doing in the community. And this is a wonderful forum to be recognized by the city council, but the business at hand is, with the gavel, is a little bit different than the glad handing. So, I appreciate you all discussing this, by the way. I really do.
Thank you.
Alderman Savage?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I also, since we're on the topic, I just want to mention that, so first of all, the difference between the general comments and the public comments on legislation. The general public comments, do we want to, I don't know if they do this elsewhere, but if there's a dedicated, if something's been introduced and there's a dedicated public hearing, do we want to allow people to testify during the general comments on legislation that already has a dedicated public hearing at a future meeting? And also, regarding the public comments period, I'm not sure if we have much of a plan for when there is an incredible amount of turnout. For example, again, last night at the county, they had over 100 people, hundreds of people, out to testify. They had a line going out the building.
Did they vote on the legislation last night?
No, well, that's not a thing, but they had security in place to screen people. They had a separate room set up where people could go, because, you know, a fire marshal, you can only fit so many people in the room. They had someplace else set up. They had sign-up sheets plenty for people to sign up to speak, and they just kind of rotated people in and out of the room. I don't think we get that very often at all, but if we did, I think it might be good to have a plan in place. regarding your comment about what you just mentioned about the county.
The gavel coming down and you stop?
Well, they do that. I can't remember where I was going with that.
The thing that makes sense to me is, if we're going to hear from the public, we ought to, and I notice you do it too, I take notes. And it seems to me like we should be taking those notes away with us, reviewing them, and thinking about how we would reconsider or amend or somehow react differently to the legislation. I mean, maybe you're better than I am, but I can't do all of that instantaneously and then go on to a vote. There's a lot of interesting things that are brought up to us by the public that, oh yeah, I didn't even think about that. How would we do that? And so I think when we have public testimony on the ordinance or resolution and then go right on to vote to it, I wonder how much we're really listening to what people are saying.
Well, you're not suggesting that we do that. We don't do that now.
No, well, sometimes we do. Sometimes we take public testimony on the night we vote.
Well, but during public participation, not during public hearing.
Yeah, right.
Now, they have already had an opportunity during public hearing to speak to it. And if for some reason they don't do that or choose to come back again, which is a whole nother issue, they can speak a second time or they could speak during public participation. But we can't change the way we...
Well, we can if we want to. I don't know that we want to.
Yeah.
But look at how many, on the short-term rental, there are some people who have been back to the well several meetings in a row, both council meetings and committee meetings, saying essentially the same thing over and over again, sort of like, if you bludgeon us enough, we'll come around to your point of view or whatever. That to me is counterproductive. That to me is not a good use of our time or frankly their time. But I'm sure that it's done at least in part for fear that we haven't really heard them. But I think, once, twice after that, I mean, how many times do you get to go to the well?
Does the county, and I think they do, and I was one of those when I was president of the teachers union who used to go to the county council meetings, of course, because that's our funding, and have spoken many times within the confined limits without an issue, and spoke for 5,000 people that I represented. But you only did it once.
Right.
Yeah.
Even
Unless
during
it's
the budget.
amended, yeah.
Right, even during the budget process. So are you suggesting that we also say you can only speak on any ordinance, resolution, charter amendment one time? And more importantly, how do we track that?
Well, yeah.
Well, the county does, and they, if something's amended, then you get another opportunity to testify, but they do keep track. But they also, there's a difference in, I'm not saying we do this, but I think our model's better, but they do have the public testimony and the vote in the same night. Although if somebody, again, introduces an amendment, then it all gets kicked. There's another public comment period and another vote. I do agree that I think we should keep it to have the vote a separate night than the public comment.
So the acting city attorney is pushing us to a mode more like the county, that if you amend it at all, it should automatically not go to third reader, but go back out to public hearing. I think there is a fairness issue there as well. And somebody may have been perfectly happy with the code as introduced, but may have a lot to say about the amendment because of some impact it would have on them, or they want to point out an unintended consequence to us or whatever. So I'm more and more inclined to think that it's probably a good idea to have, in fact, to me, second and third reader on the same night seems kind of stupid. Because third reader, when have we ever changed anything on third reader? So it does seem to me that if on second reader we amend, it ought to be automatic that we don't take a third reader that night, but we go back, and whether we vote for a public hearing or not, we at least give people an opportunity to send us email and let us know that the amendments have some impact on them, and so not take the third reader until the next council meeting, or whenever is appropriate. Could be longer than that.
Or the second
Well, I think
reader is when you,
So
I think
if
it'll
we,
drag on,
it comes up for second reader and there are amendments offered and approved, it seems to me that a change to the code should be, there will be no third reader on anything that has had an amendment on second reader.
I don't necessarily agree. I think I like how it's set up now, whereas if we feel it's a substantive change, substantive amendment, then we can extend it out for another public comment. But if it's just some minor correction or amendment that doesn't change things much, then I think we could
Well, now
Let's go ahead
Carrie is
and
having us,
go to third reader.
she's reminding us that
And that's good.
you've made
yeah.
a change. Is it significant enough that it should go to a third reader at another meeting?
Right.
and
Or go
and I
back-
think.
Or even go back to another public
I
hearing.
think that's what she's been stressing. If it's significant enough,
Mhm.
then should it go back to public hearing, a second public hearing? And there's nothing wrong with that, and I think that's in the code.
Yeah.
So that's not any different. We don't do it, or
We have not been
rarely.
in the habit of doing it.
Rarely do we do it. I think we may
Usually
have done
because-
it once or twice.
Usually because when it's 1:30 in the morning and we're
Right.
just saying, let's just get rid of this.
Right. That's not best use of
that's-
time either.
Yeah, exactly.
But this whole discussion sounds like another ordinance that will get to how we conduct our meetings, the order of our meetings, and just everything that we've been talking about. Because, and maybe we need somebody, a task force of the council, to look into this.
I actually think we should have a council agenda committee.
Well, that
which would
should be
make
part of the
liaison-
discussion.
But to me, the amount of discussion we're having now is indicative that even if this were to pass, we have more work to do.
Oh, no question.
But I think, I'm not sure that this will, well, we know that it can work with 3 minutes because we did it for years and years. We've never had a limit on
Without
how
any
many times.
complaints,
you
if I
can-
recall.
Oh,
Well,
I don't know about that.
You
but
get the,
Right.
well, so we've already made the decision that we're not going, the Rules Committee's not going to take action on 031.
Right.
And, you know, if the Rules Committee sees
But-
fit, then we can begin work on that new ordinance and sponsor it as a Rules Committee.
But what
Ordinance.
you could do as chair, when this comes up for a vote, we always have the chair of the committee report, you can give the council an inkling of what we've spoken about. Say, there may be more work to do, we're thinking about some other things potentially, but, because I think when it gets to the committee, there probably are 5 votes for it.
Well, there were 9 sponsors on it originally,
Some of us are dropping like
so there are
flies,
some who've dropped off, but.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, so do we need a motion, Ms. Green, to take no action on,
No.
okay. And Alderman, when I take notes, and I'm taking notes on my iPad as people speak, I attach them to the legislation so that I can
Yeah,
see
me
how
too.
many people were for, how many against, or when we're taking action. So,
Yeah, that's one of the nice things about the iPad.
Mm-hmm.
You can put those notes down.
okay. I think that exhausts our agenda. Man, you guys really know how to chop up an agenda.
Did you get your password fixed?
Well, I'm in, so
Oh, okay.
I guess.
Do you know what it is?
I emailed it.
You know?
I emailed it to you.
Oh.
Is
You all
it
made
the
up a
same as mine?
password for me?
Yeah, it's the same as yours.
Then
Rob,
you keep it
yours too.
handy.
You know what I did?
Is it the same one?
Mhm.
We all have the same one still.
So is it
Mine was working.
capital C,
It
capital
wasn't
C,
going to.
Takia,
So
is
tell the
it
world,
capital C, capital H, exclamation 160, exclamation? Oh, good. All
are
right.
you kidding me?
No.
That's not the whole thing.
There's more to it?
Yes.
Okay, so mine needs to be changed.
It's in, yeah, but I emailed it to you. It's easy though.
All All right, I will entertain a motion to adjourn if there's no more business of the committee.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. And we're going to study,
Yeah, Ashley's comments,
Yeah.
and I really would value input
Was gonna stop.
from you. Let me give this